All right. Well, I don't talk about personal finances so often on here, really rarely ever. And I think it is absolutely something that really should be talked about more for young guys in their 20s. And I think it's incredibly important that we do and that we're more open about our money and we talk about it more often and that we know what's going on with it. We know what's coming in, what's going out, and we just have a handle of it. And I personally wish I had started earlier with my money, with my financial journey, with investing, with understanding finances. And my dream for this episode is that you and I can inspire somebody and give them the tools to start today so that they don't look back in regret and wish they had started earlier or wish they had done things differently and that they could have understood it earlier. So I want us to give them the tools today and that they can start now and know that they started today or tomorrow or the next day, sometime really soon in the future. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do. Give us a brief background of you and your credentials, and then I'll get into all the questions I have for you.
Sure, absolutely. So my name's Michael LaCivita. I'm a financial advisor. Been in the industry about 11 and a half years at this point. Started my career back in 2013 after I graduated. And really, as I worked my way through the industry, accumulated this knowledge working with individual investors and families. My background's really focused around investments, but also financial planning, right? Building a financial overarching strategy to get you from where you are now to where you want to be in the future. Little of my credentials, I'm a certified financial planner, and what that means is a course of study, and a test on the knowledge you've received, as well as the ethics around financial planning for individuals, families, businesses, and it focuses on the main areas of someone's financial life, right? Which is, your investments, your retirement planning, taxes, estate planning, insurance, cash flow, all the areas that make up your money and your financial picture and how it all has to come together into a plan that's personalized to you. So, that's what I apply in my skill in my day-to-day practice is helping to people who have questions about their finances, have a plan with their money, or don't have a plan at all and want to get to where they need to be. So really that's my background. What inspires me and I'm passionate about is being able to help people day to day on a topic that everyone has questions around and needs help around, but is often, unsure what to ask or not comfortable asking. So, and I really love to be able to help people with that aspect of it.
What are some of those questions that people are uncomfortable asking? Like, what are those common questions that you're getting on a day-to-day basis from clients?
Sure. I mean, the big one is, am I on track, right? Am I okay to do what I want to do, to retire, to buy a house? Am I saving enough? Are my investments set up the right way? Are all really common. Am I missing something, right? Am I missing some piece of the puzzle here that I'm that's leaving me away from a big part of where I need to be? So those are the most common ones, and they all have ready solutions. We can help you with them, but yeah, I'd say that's really common to most people.
And what are the biggest mistakes you are seeing clients make in terms of money and their financial situations?
Absolutely. The biggest mistakes are people just put it off, right? There's concern, there's aversion around something you don't feel comfortable doing. And this is the case with almost anything in our lives, right? Like exercise, I'll give you an analogy of like going to the gym. Like I don't like doing my abs when I go to the gym. Doesn't feel good, right? Like I don't enjoy it. But the reality is it's like the thing that makes you most uncomfortable often is the thing that you need the most. And that really applies to money. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of aversion around money in our society and individuals because of lack of knowledge or familial experience with money that gets overlaid into something that's really quite practical and very important. And I think that's the biggest mistake is just not addressing what you should be doing, right? And looking at your finances in a way that's, you know, just data driven, and practical. Just looking at clearly, objectively of like, what do I need to do? Where am I at? Where do I want to be? And then start checking off those boxes of what you need to do to get there.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the aversion and the shame around it because like there really isn't a great way to learn about money unless you have somebody in your corner or you have a financial planner or you have your dad's money guy who it's kind of been just like passed down to you, and you don't know if they're even doing the right things, but like that's just what you're told to do or what like you're expected to do. And I mean, there's a lot of misunderstanding or just not an understanding of money in general. So why do you think outside of like shame and aversion, money and finances and investing are topics that people steer away from so much? And why do you think it takes people so long to start?
Well, I think one piece, the big piece outside of, your background, your experience, the emotional baggage that can come around money is a lack of knowledge. We're not taught anything about finances as part of our primary school education, like at any time, which is hugely detrimental when it comes down to breaking your way in the real world. Okay, rubber meets the road. You have a job, you've got this cash flow, you've got expenses. How do you organize it all? We're not taught any of that. So I think the big thing is I don't blame anyone for not feeling comfortable because there's no knowledge around it, which is a shame because it is so important to have a strong financial plan, a strong position where you need to be. Other than that, I think there's just so much. There's sometimes overload in the industry, right? There's just so much out there on the internet, TikTok, Instagram, where you're getting all this information, but like there's not a real laid out central source of, okay, what's most important? What are the steps I need to follow to go from not having any plan or any idea what to do with my money to a plan that works for me for where I want to get to? I think that's lacking out there in the industry. Unless, of course, like you said, you have an advisor that's credentialed, knows what they're talking about, and can work with someone who knows your situation. Yeah, I'd say it's just the lack of knowledge and information overload in the information in the data that's out there.
I think that's a great segue into my next kind of line of questioning I have for you. And it's about like, how do you start for somebody that has no idea where to start and feels like they don't know enough? They feel this information overload. They feel like they don't even have enough knowledge to begin with. What do you tell that person what do you tell that person first of all? And then what do you tell that person when you sit down and make a plan with them? But take the first one first.
The first thing you got to start with is, where are you right now, right? What do you make, right? And most uncomfortably for everyone, what are you spending, right? That's the number one thing you can do is figure out where does your money go in a month, right? Which no one likes to do. It's not comfortable because it does force you to look and say, wow, this is shocking how much I'm spending on, going out to eat. That coffee every day, really, it does add up, right? And I don't like to get into the analogy of like the avocado toast. Like that's ridiculous for like what's taught about in terms of millennials. Why can't they afford things? There's much bigger things at play than just that. But the reality is in your day-to-day life, very often there are small things that add up in big ways. So I think the number one thing is starting with where are you at? What do you make and what do you spend? And then start to think about think about those big picture things. What do I want my life to look like? Right down the road. What does retirement look like for me? What does financial independence look like for me? What are my hobbies, interests, life experiences I want to have that are important? Do I want to start a family? Do I want to own a home? Do I want to be able to travel? Where do I want to travel? If I could do what I want to do with my life in terms of work or just what I'm doing day to day, what does that look like? And that's I think there's not enough time spent on that when folks come and meet with me and sit down of like, what does my life look like? A lot of folks, many people spend their time working, right, saving their money, and they sit down with me and I ask them, well, what does your life look like? And it's just shrug. I don't really know. I think having a clearer picture of what you want to do is going to help you draw the day-to-day habits and activities to that long-term goal. And it's going to help me as a financial advisor in personalize your plan and draw them all together as well, right? It just helps me understand you better when you're working with an advisor, when I know what you want to do with your money. Right.
What percentage of people that you work with do you think know how much they spend on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Less than 5%.
Yeah, right.
It's staggering.
That is staggering. And like when I sat down to do it, my financial plan, I was like, I don't know what I spend and I don't want to know. Like I don't want to look at it because it's just like that's too much. And it's kind of embarrassing also. There's like a piece of that too that I think people feel for how out of control they may have been last month or like an expense that they they bought and they just were like, like it was worth it right then and there, or how many drinks you bought at the bar is like another big one for people my age, how much you spent
Sure.
on dates, dating.
Yeah.
So what do you tell the person that's feeling that like kind of aversion, that embarrassment, that like, I know where to start. I don't want to, all that, like that feeling.
Yeah. I think the big thing is you can't dwell on the past too much. It informs us about the future, but I think that it gets back to that shame and aversion thing. The more we dwell on our past decisions and then focus and live in the past, the less likely we're going to be able to, one, live in the present or plan for the future, right? And so I think number one is to understand, like when you look at your finance, look at what you spent last month. No, that was you last month, right? It was what it was. What am I going to change now that's going to address that? And it doesn't need to be a big thing. It doesn't mean you don't need to start with, I'm not going to go out and have any drinks. I'm not going to hang out with my friends next month. Don't do that. Like definitely go out and hang out with your friends. Definitely go out on dates. Like do all that. But then you have to look and see, okay, am I directing money towards some areas that I could cut back on that's going to facilitate that part of my life that I enjoy? And very often the answer is yes. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's, hey, actually things are tight right now, right? I can't do everything, but that I want, but that's okay. And once you start there, then you can start making plans towards, well, how do I get to a point where I'm doing all these things that I want to do, right? But I think that number one thing is when you start on that process, and it can be as easy as just go over your bank statement for the last month, whatever you use. If you use a credit card, like just download them at the end of the month. That they send you a little notification in the email that says do it. Look at it and just go through it, tally it up, and see where you end. Start there, and then if there is something that's a little shocking, eye-popping, just work through that, feel that, like note that, but then don't hang on to it or beat yourself up about it because, hey, we've all been there. I can tell you when I was starting out working, right, and I'm starting in the financial industry, there's been times where I overdrafted my debit card. I was like, and that feels crappy. And you're like, oh, but that's a thing that motivated me to go, I need to see what I'm spending, right? I'm spending too much, right?
Yeah.
And so that really was a catalyst for me to change my own behaviors about my spending and my relationship with spending to where that doesn't happen anymore, right? And so if you're having those moments that feel uncomfortable, don't run from them, but embrace them as an opportunity to change yourself, right? And I think that's the big thing too, that the most uncomfortable feelings often can lead to the biggest changes in our lives for the positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you tell? I mean, like, what are some of those little areas that people can cut back on or work on fixing? Like, start there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big ones are, I mean, if you're going out and getting a coffee's a big thing. Like coffee's expensive. Like the other day, I live out in Portland, Oregon. We got a lot of good coffee out here, but I looked at the price for a medium latte. It was $8. That's
Crazy.
insane. That's insane. Like think about what is the constituent components of coffee. It is water, beans, and milk. Okay, like none of that in 16 ounces should be $8. Okay, so when you have those moments of like that doesn't make sense, like listen to that, and then like I think that's really for me like making your own coffee saves a lot of money if you drink coffee or tea or whatever. Just do that. If you can make your own food as much as possible, do that, right? Rather than going out to eat. And I know everyone's busy, and if you're running around your job and all that, carving out the time to make your own food saves tons of money. It's healthier, and you're going to learn a new skill, which is cooking, right? Like that's a huge one. Keeping track of your how much you're traveling, right? I don't know, depending you live in the city, right? So you're using the subway, or are you taking Ubers everywhere, right? Or can you walk? Can you bike? Like these are all things like Uber transportation can add up a ton, especially if you're young, working. That's huge. And then finally, just keep an eye on, those areas of like weird spending. Amazon can be brutal. Like it's so easy to go out and buy something on Amazon. It's literally 2 clicks. They've made it as simple as like even 1 click sometimes, right? So be really careful with how much you're spending, and anything. A good rule of thumb is anything over like $100 that you're going to spend, give it like 72 hours before you buy that thing. And that's a rule you can set for yourself is, do I really want that, right? Do I really need that right now? Can that wait a couple months? That's a helpful way to start putting some things in place.
I think those are really, really helpful tips for somebody my age, somebody a little younger, somebody a little older. Like I think
Yeah.
those couple things can be really beneficial to everybody. When you sit down to start with somebody, a new client, what are the first, walk us through what that conversation looks like with a new client you bring on?
First off, just get to know them. Like, where do they live? What are they doing for a living? What's their family situation like? What's going on in their picture, right? What do they got going on? Are they married? Are they single? Do they have kids? What do they do for a living? How much do they make, right? We're going to get into that. Number one, like, how much are they making? And secondly, like, the big thing is what questions do they have? What concerns do they have about their finances? Why are we sitting down in the first place? Because I don't know, you sat down with me and you want financial advice. That can mean a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
So just help me understand what is going on in your situation that's got you here, right?
Can we
And
walk?
so
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah,
No, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
You first. I'll ask you my question after. I want to ask you to walk through a scenario with you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so then after we get to know them a bit, build out their picture, I just ask a lot of questions, about their lives, what they want, what they're needing. We then start to get into more specifics, right? We drill down into what do their investments look like? What do they have in savings? What are their debt situation? When do they want to retire? What does retirement look like for them? If they have kids, what's the plan for educating them, right? What are those medium-term goals they had in the next, 2 to 10 years? Are there any big purchases like that's home purchase, buying a car, like taking big trips? Like what does that look like in their financial picture so I can then inform, what steps we need to take today to get there?
I'd love to do like a scenario of somebody kind of similar to my age and
Sure.
walk through like what this looks like for them.
Yeah.
So you want to start or should I start?
You go ahead, Josh. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. I am 20, let's say 22, 23, 24, somewhere in that range. Just graduated. I'm moving from college to a new city. I am making somewhere 70 to 120,000. Should I pick one
hmm
or is that like a fine range?
Let's do 100. Well, let's
Okay,
do
making
let's do like let's do like 80, 80, 85, because that
Yeah,
seems more
because that's
normal for a
probably an
lot of folks. Yeah.
average like
Yeah.
salary post college.
In the
80,
city. Yeah.
85, single, living with one or two other people, roommates. Um, and I want to get my financial picture in order. I want to start investing. I've never invested before. I don't know anything about my money, and I want to start because I feel behind already, and I know that there's power of compounding. I don't even know what that means, but I know it exists.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah. Josh, thanks for sitting down with me today. I'm gonna start. I'd like to start with just, what city you moving to? When do you start? When do you start your job? Let's just start there.
I start my job in 2 weeks, and I'm living in New York City,
New York City, awesome, great. What part of New York are you gonna live in?
East Village.
Okay, awesome. Um, what are you gonna be doing for a living?
I work in, let's say, tech.
Tech. Okay. Um, when you think about your finances, like, what gives you the most concern? Like, what bothers you the most? When you think about your biggest area you could get help with, what's on your mind?
The fact that there's so many apps out there to start investing with that I haven't invested in the first place. I know I should be. There's also like, I don't know, there's crypto and
Mm,
there's the S&P 500 and all these things exist and I don't know what to do with my money, how much I should be saving each month. I have a lot of
hmm.
anxiety about all of this and a lot of questions. And this is pretty much me 2 years ago, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I want to start with just, let's make sure. Do you have a checking and savings account set up? Like, baseline,
No.
is that set? No. Okay, so we got to get that set up. Let's make sure and I would pick a bank that's going to be local to you. Now you're in New York, so there's going to be a lot of different banks you can choose from. They're all kind of headquartered there. Wall Street's there, so pick a bank that's going to be useful to you, that's nearby. You can get ATMs if you need cash, and let's start with opening up a checking and a savings account. Do you have any credit cards?
I do. I have a credit card.
Okay, let's be really careful about what we're using on that credit card. Like, is there a balance on it right now?
Yes.
Okay, how much is on that credit card?
So in college, I'll use me. I had a Discover card for my
Hmm.
first 2 years because that's all I could get, and that's like your starting card, right? Like that's
Yeah.
and So I had a Discover card, then I moved up to a Wells Fargo card.
Okay, gotcha. How much is on that card right now? Is there a balance? Are you carrying a balance from college on that card?
That means like what I've spent so far.
Is there money? Is there like money that you've spent that's on it you haven't paid it off? Haven't paid off?
No, I've paid it
No,
off.
no balance. Awesome. Paid off, rocking. You're doing great. So I want to check that because if there is a balance on a credit card that you're carrying over, we want to know that because that's going to be one of your first priorities is trying to pay that down. Because
Got it.
money coming out of your, like a credit card is going to sap money from your everyday financial life without you ever knowing it, right? It's negative. So there's compounding. There's the issue of inflation, right? That as over time, prices go up, the cash we have in our bank account stays the same, but it's actually losing value because prices are going up, right? Now, with debt, it compounds that by saying not only is the debt we owe and what we owe there, but it's going up at a much higher rate than inflation. So inflation's like at 3.5%, 4%. You know, debt is going to be going up at 16, 20, 30%, depending on the credit card, right? So that's rapidly inflating and we're losing a lot more of our purchasing power and our future self. We're robbing our future self the longer we hold on to debt, especially on a credit card, right? And so that's number one. I want to know if there's any debt situation as you're heading into the workforce. Student loans, the other thing I want to know. Okay, yeah. So like, do you have any student loans from what you're working on,
Let's
from your
say
career?
well, two things. One is
Yeah.
so what you're saying is if you have a balance on the credit card you haven't paid off, that's very bad.
It's not very bad. A lot of people have debt, right? The reality is, don't look at it as bad, right? I think the word you're using, bad, negative, it has a punishing connotation. We don't want to have that. Think about that's an area we want to address, right?
Got it.
Not bad, just that's an area that, in terms of our priority list, let's think about priorities. That's near the high. That's higher on the list of what we want to address.
You're good at this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say for the sake of the story that I do have student debt.
Okay. So we want to know how much, and we want to know if it's public or private loans. You don't have to know this all on the spot when we're working together, right? But I want to know that because if they're all public loans, there's a little more leniency. They're typically interest rates are going to be lower. So that means your interest isn't going to be piling up, and your debt isn't going to be growing as fast as if you're having a higher interest rate. So, often people have a combination of public and private debts in their student loans when they come to me. And so we'd want to know that situation. How much is the total amount? What are the interest rates? And then what do we want to start to chip away at? That's going to help me determine what we're going to chip away at first because we want to pay off those student loans eventually, right, down the road. It's
Yeah.
not going to be a 1 year thing. It's not going to be a 2 year. It's going to be a multi-year plan to pay off those loans. And that's, again, a lot of shame people have for having this debt, or it's talked about a lot. I have this student loan, and I'm never going to get over it. That thinking will perpetuate the loan in the future, rather than taking ownership and say, I can pay this off with a plan and with a purpose, and down the road I'll make more money, right? I'll advance in my career if I plan myself right and get myself on the track I want to be on, and I'll have more ability and flexibility to pay them down. So I want to know that loan situation. So is there anything outstanding that's money that's owed that we need to pay off? That's number one that we want to figure out.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, let's take the person who doesn't have student debt or any
Okay.
loans.
Yeah. So if you're all no student loans, no debt, we're going to start with, let's establish a bank account, credit card, or excuse me, not a credit card, debit account, and a savings account, checking savings account. We're also going to want to set up a high.
And that means, by the way, going into the bank, right, and going to the teller and saying, I want to open a savings
Yes.
and checking account. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. Going to the bank, getting that set up, getting it all squared away. You'll get a debit card. You'll get for your checking account, which you can use, and then they'll give you checks. Nowadays, no one uses checks really for anything,
Right.
but they'll give you a checkbook probably. So you have that. And then from there, that will be your main way you're going to be buying things.
Is there any difference in picking a bank? Like, there's kind of, for some reason, consideration around which bank to go to. Does it matter where you go? Does it matter at all?
Not nowadays, not particularly. They all really offer, most major banks are offering pretty similar products when it comes to the checking and saving. So what I like to look at is proximity, right? How proximity of ATMs, right? In case you need cash here and there. And then you can look and see like do they have like ATM fees or like there's other things you can. It's really doesn't matter all that much right now. I think it's more about just finding a place you feel comfortable with doing business with. And for me, I picked Wells Fargo when I moved out to Portland, Oregon from Michigan because they're the most bank branches around. So it was easy if I
Yeah.
need to run in and get help something. So that's what I would do. If you're moving to New York, you're gonna be in New York. They're all there. So it's just pick one
Okay.
that's nearby you. So yeah.
Okay. The next thing
Um,
was you go to the
next
next
thing
thing.
was, next thing was, so you're going to start your job, right? When you start your job, make sure with your bank account open, you have all that information. You're going to set up direct deposit. So direct deposit means that your check that you get paid at the end, every 2 weeks is going to show up in your bank account. So you're getting paid for your money. You're not having to go and take a check, that physical check that they give you, take a picture of it, or take it into the bank. Right? It's just gonna make it
Right.
simple and seamless so you get paid. So set that direct deposit up. Yeah.
Okay. Next thing.
Yeah. After that, then we're gonna look at your savings options. Right? With your company, does it have a 401k? That's number one. So what is a 401k? It's a retirement plan. Typically, companies offer 401ks to allow their employees to put money into a plan directly from their paycheck that will then you invest within that plan and will accumulate more wealth over time. It'll build and grow over time, right? A lot of companies will provide a match to your money. So for every dollar you put in, they'll put in a dollar themselves. It's usually a percentage based on your salary. So if you have a 6% match and you put in, $100 into your account, they're going to match it with, $6. Doesn't sound like that much, but over time that'll grow, and that's quite a bit that it can be as grow your wealth. So if you have a match, you definitely want to utilize it. So why save into a 401k? Well, we've got to set this habit of saving for our future. And a 401k has some built-in ways of doing that. One, you can't take money directly out of a 401k without a penalty. So there's a built-in like barrier for us to grab that money if there's an emergency, which is really good, I think, for us to have some like guardrails of this money is for my future. I'm not going to touch it for a long time, right?
Yeah.
There's also tax benefits. One, money that goes into that 401k can reduce your tax bill today, and it grows tax-free when it's in there, in that account. So not being subject to taxes as your wealth accumulates, really important. And then lastly, you can set the percentage of your paycheck that directly goes into your 401k. So typically, if someone has a match, I say at least let's start with just doing the company match, meeting the same amount. So if you have a 4% match, do 4% of your paycheck. All right, let's just start there. Gradually over time, you're going to want to contribute more, right? But by doing that company match, you're getting the maximum amount. That's free money your company's giving you, right? So that's part of your benefits as an employee. Don't leave that money on the table. Once we set up your 401k match, right? That we've already got a couple things squared away. Then what I'm going to have you do is keep an eye on your finances for the next month as you spend. Go out, do the things you're going to do. Just keep an eye on it. Like where does it end up? Where did you end up spending? Where did it go? Let's look into where these dollars are going, and we have some rules of thumb as far as how much to spend here and there, and like what you should be looking at. But the really big thing is getting to that habit of looking at where I'm spending, where my money's going each month, and how I feel at the end of the month. Do I have a surplus? Am I at a deficit? If we have a deficit, we had to use our credit card, right? We know that, or we overdrafted. So the big thing is we want to see a surplus every month, that we've got extra money left over, we're spending less than we make after we're doing our saving and we are doing our normal everyday spending, right?
Yeah.
So with that, let's say we have a surplus, what do we do next? Let's give that money a home, all right? The number one thing you have to do first is build an emergency fund. Right? So an emergency fund is going to allow you to not have to rely on debt, not have to rely on a credit card. And it can be as simple as putting money starting off into that savings account we've established. So let's say you have, $400 left over every month. Every month, then we want to set up an automatic distribution of $400 into that savings account. Right? So we're going to take any extra and build that up over the months moving forward to, get to a place to where we have first minimum 3 months worth of your expenses. So what do you spend every month? Multiply by 3. That's what you want to have. So if you're spending, $4,000 a month, you want $12,000 saved in that emergency fund. That'll mean if something comes up, hey, I've had emergency, there was a bigger cost than expected, you have it ready to go and you don't have to rely on debt to do it.
And where do you put that emergency fund? Like, where do you even hold that?
So I think starting off with just, if you want to keep it really simple, it can just be in a savings account. But the next level move is to open something called a high yield savings account, which your bank may offer. And that's something you might want to look at with your bank when you're making your selections. Do they offer a high yield savings account? It just means it's a bank account that provides a higher interest rate than typical bank accounts. And so most banks are offering that now, and they're in the 3.5-4% range in terms of what your interest will be. There's some companies online will offer a little bit higher, like Marcus and Ally offer a little bit higher interest rate, and they're all online, which you could totally have an online high yield savings account if you want. And you don't have to have it at the same bank. I think it makes sense to kind of have it all in the same place and the same bank, just because it's easy to move money in between your accounts. They're all right there. There's no delay. Let's say you have an emergency. You don't want to have to worry about, is it going to take 3 days or 2 days to get to my bank account? I just want to move it in between instantly and get into my checking account so I can pay what I need to pay. Right.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So once you've got your emergency fund squared away, you're matching your 401k. Then we'll look at, let's start looking at investing then, right? And investing is just really taking the money we have and putting it into a set of instruments or investments that are going to grow in the future. So what are all those investments? Well, stocks, that's pieces of a company, right? You're a partial owner. An ETF fund, exchange traded fund, that's a bunch of different, your own shares in a bunch of different companies, right? Mutual funds, same thing. We want to start with ETFs, like ETFs and mutual funds. You're going to find mutual funds in your 401k. Yeah, it's usually your plan is going to provide a list, and you're going to select a variety of those. As an advisor, I'd let you know what you'd want to do. Of course, online there's a lot of guidance about this. I won't get into the super specifics about what funds do I buy, but ultimately we want to start whatever money you're putting in your 401k, you want it invested, right, and working for you, not just sitting in the cash option that's in that 401k. When we're using extra money that that we're earning, right, we've got that surplus, we want to put it into a brokerage account. So there you can go on to, there's so many different brokerage account options, but ultimately I'll talk about a couple. Charles Schwab is great, Fidelity, Vanguard, all those offer really low cost options to open an account, and they offer a huge wide range of investing choices. Right now there's smaller companies that are out there too that are maybe newer, like there's Webull and there's these other companies you can use, Robinhood. The main thing is just looking how much does it cost to open an account, right? And how much does it cost to close out an account, which you shouldn't be doing, but just look at if there's any fees that are related to, putting money in, taking money out. It's all stuff that you can investigate as part of your process. But in the same way you have a direct deposit from your bank, from your company to your checking account, you want to set up a direct deposit from your checking account to your investment account, right? So we pick an amount, we'd work and say, let's move $200 of that surplus every month into this investment account. Once it's in the investment account, we're going to pick out a series of easy investments that you're going to be able to follow yourself and build a portfolio. From 3 or 4 different exchange traded funds is plenty for a well-rounded portfolio. So the great thing is we live in times where there's lots and lots of really good low-cost options to invest, and once you get through some of the jargon that comes around with investing, it's rather easy to manage your own wealth and have the tools themselves are very simple to work with, which is great. It's just getting through some of that jargon and that language barrier that's out there in the financial industry. But
this is so awesome, and it is exactly what I would have wanted to hear when I was graduating college and starting a new job. Like, this is exactly what I was hoping this would be. And for the guy now, let's say he's a year into the job. He's finally saving some money and wants to start investing and building a portfolio. What are your recommendations for, like, which funds? Can you share some recommendations?
Yeah. So we want to stick with low cost exchange traded funds. right? If you Google that, you're going to find a ton of different choices online. There's Reddits on this. There's a lot of different stuff and pathways to go down, but I would focus on a couple different options. Like Vanguard offers something called VOO, right? And that just gives you exposure to the S&P 500. The S&P 500, it's the 500 largest US-based companies, all in one index, which is just a way of tracking their prices and how they're doing at any given time. So something like VOO or IJR is another one, right? They all do the same thing. They give you a piece of all those 500 companies when you put your money into their fund. The reason why we like doing that versus buying individual companies have something called stock specific risk. An individual company can do all sorts of things, can go up, can go down, like anything can happen to an individual company tied to how they're doing. It's a lot less risky to own a basket of companies rather than just one, right? Just the old saying, we're not putting our eggs in one basket. We want to put our eggs in multiple baskets all over the place. So, VOO, that's a really good place, just the S&P 500. I want to keep it really simple for right now. Then what we want to do is, there's a couple things, right? Once you have your money in that invested, just keep adding to it, right? Just keep adding to it. It'll grow over time. A big thing that you want to learn as investors, control of your emotions. Like investing itself, the steps of investing are not hard. What is hard is the emotions that come with investing. And I had the gift of working at a company when I started that was really focused around the emotional side of investing, and that our behavior shapes how successful we are. So I'll get you into some of the science here that comes into with investing, right? Is we are wired as people. We're natural. We come from the earth, right? We were preyed upon as animals, and then as early man, right? We had to deal with a lot of things. Like cavemen had to go out into the world, face saber-toothed tigers and mammoths and wolves and all these things, right? And so we were really wired to be something called risk averse, right? We when we think there is something risky or a danger out there to us, we try to avoid it, right? So it's the idea of, if we perceive danger, like if we were walking along and we see a stick on the ground, right? And we might for a second feel this motion, maybe that's a snake, right? There's that like halt. Well, that's because back in our day, someone we knew, right, or we saw someone get bit by a snake that they thought was a stick, so we're just going to treat all sticks as snakes just to be safe. Now, that works really well for survival, right, if we're out in the world. It's really poor when it comes to investing, right, because what we're conflating is this short-term risk or volatility of prices, right? GameStop or Ford or Apple are going to go up and down all the time, right? And sometimes by quite a bit. But we can't say that, hey, because those are going up and down, that's the same thing as financial ruin. It just isn't. But we're wired; we react the same way to it. So that control over our emotions and understanding our brain is going to try to trick us to do something that's not in our long-term best interest is a huge key that you can learn as an early investor. So knowing that about ourselves, and it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel scared when we look at our portfolio and it's gone down, 20%. But also understanding that it's quite common that will happen. If you're in your 20s, that's going to happen, multiple times. Every 2 years, you're going to see that at least, right? So think about that over, 20 years. That's, you're going to see a ton of fluctuation in the price of your portfolio. The sooner you understand that that's normal, it's okay. And the right reaction is to just ignore it. Don't act on that feeling of, hey, pull my money out. Oh my gosh, the house is burning down. Let's get everything out of it. That's where people really hurt themselves when it comes to investing. That's where the horror stories come from, right? Of, I lost all my money in stocks. It's not because they held on to their positions. It's often they sold at the wrong time, right? They perceived danger, their price dropped, they pulled their money, went to cash. Then a couple of days later or a month later, it shot right back up, and then if they just stayed their course, they'd be in the same place they started and then be on their path to earning more over time. So
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll pause there.
What does staying that course look like? Is when you're putting money into the S&P 500 or one of those funds that you just recommended or said that are very common, what does that look like? Are you holding that money for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50? Like, what does that look like for most of your clients and people you work
Yeah,
with?
great question. So when it comes down to your 401k, you really can't touch that till you're 59 and a half, right? Or 55, depending on the plan. So that's really long-term money. You can't even touch it. You can't pull it out without a penalty. So that's money, just leave it alone, right? It's multi-decade, 30. If you're in your 20s and you want to retire, 50, 60, right? That's 30 years from now. Don't even think about it, right? Now for shorter term money with a brokerage account, that's money you could pull out if you needed to. If you need to pull some money out or buy something, you have the ability to do that. You're not going to be penalized. You'll pay capital gains taxes on it, but there's not really that barrier of pulling out in the same way. What I want people to think about when they're putting money into an investment account, this is not money I need for at least 5 years, right? So if there's money that you're not going to touch, it's money that you're putting away with a time horizon 5 years. This is for my future 5-year self, okay? And that I think is a good rule of thumb. Now, honestly, the longer you leave money in and the more you stay the course, the more wealth you're going to have. I have found in my experience, the people who look at their money the least, that is after they've got their system all set up, tend to be the wealthiest and the most peaceful about their money, the most relaxed about their money and dealing with the fluctuations that are going to come with it. So the trick is, you're going to be inundated with a lot of information in the financial media, right? And if you're looking at your investments all the time, right? If you subscribe to financial TikTok or financial anything, there's going to be a lot of updates, and there's this churn in financial media to always have a story and something going on. And that's really contrary to what you need to be doing as an investor, right? Which is doing very little over time. Investing is really quite boring if you're doing it in a passive, long-term way. And so one of the key mistakes I think is looking at financial media, getting triggered by it to look at your investments, seeing, oh, my investments are going down, I need to do something now. That's the cascading effect I see that really is a problem. Now, as an advisor, my job is to help if someone feels that way, to call me up and say, hey, what's going on, Mike? Should I take my money out? To say, no, don't do that. Talk them through why we need to focus on the long term. But if you do that and you don't have an advisor and you're working on your own, avoiding that whole cascading process in the first place is really key. So just rule of thumb, once you're putting money into investment accounts, don't look at it for, 3 months. Like, look at it every 3 months. Every quarter, take a look at what's going on with your money. And what you're going to find is, generally, most of the time, it's gone up a lot more than you think, right? And you're going to look back in a couple of years, hey, I started with, $200 going to an account. It's going into this investment. Then, a year later, 2 years, 3 years later, whoa, I have thousands of dollars now, just from the fact of this practice of that is the beauty of compounding interest. It works very slowly and in ways we can't really perceive with our brain. Like it doesn't really see, but we have to have that long-term focus that checking in, periodically over longer periods of time is going to allow us to see it working for us.
So how much yeah, go ahead.
That's it.
Great. Okay. How much should you actively then have in your bank account that you can work with, that you can pay your credit cards with? How much should I, as that person, even now, have actively in my bank account?
Yeah. So this will come back to kind of your monthly expenses. I like to have a month of like whatever you spend there, right? Ready to go. So you're going to get paid twice each month, right? So, or 2 times in a month, right? You get paid most people are getting paid 2 paychecks. It can be different for different people's situations, but it's typically 2 times in a month. I like to have a month there personally of like, okay, I know I spend this much. If you spend, let's say someone spends $6,000 a month, I want to have 6,000 in my checking account, and then I want to have another three. I want to have 3 in my savings account, my high yield savings account of my spending. That way, you're prepared for the next month, right? And you're ready to go. You can handle anything that comes up. You don't have to dip into your savings emergency fund if you need it, but that's about right as far as what to have in the checking account.
Okay, cool. And then let's take that same guy again, right? So he's been in the company for a year. He just got a promotion and a raise. What does that change about what he does with the money?
Changes in a big way, right? We got more money flowing in. One of the key a pitfall that can happen is something called lifestyle creep. Boom, we got more money showing up in the bank account every month. That's awesome. That feels good. I can do more stuff. I can go out more and go on more dates. I can buy more, go to nice restaurants, right? Hey, my buddies are going to this, sweet bar. I'm going to go over there. Like, I'm going to spend a little bit more because, I have more money. And you should be able to do that, right? I'm not saying live like a Puritan and not spend any money, like don't do that. Like, you feel good, enjoy life. But the number one thing you can start with is like, oh, can I raise my contributions to my 401k? Right? That's a number one thing. Hey, can I step my percentage points up a little bit? That's really huge for planning for that future retirement goal for ourselves, right? We're funding more of that. We're going to get ourselves to that goal sooner or have more wealth when we retire. So that'll be a conversation of, start to, move up the percentage points in our high yield saving, in our retirement plan. Outside of that is, what is the surplus I'm now going to have with this new paycheck? Thinking about it that way. And so like try to live as you were and figure out like what now with this more money coming, how much more do I have? That's what you're going to start to shove into that, and then that's investment account, that extra amount you're making each month. Then we're going to start talking about, what are some of my other long-term, medium-term goals, right? Let's say you want to travel, and go over to Europe. I want to go to Japan. I want to go to the Greek island, like whatever, all this stuff people want to do, and like start to set out those goals and figure out the cost of how much does it cost to go and do that, each year. If I want to take 3 trips a year or 2 trips a year and it's going to cost me, $6,000 to do all that, start to park that money in a separate account, right, for that trip. And then know that, okay, I've got that money plan and work backwards. I've got to earn, I need to be able to go on this trip in summer and I've got 6 months to get there. Okay, so how much per month do I need to sock away into my travel fund so that at 6 months when I'm ready, it's all ready to go. My trip is totally paid for. I don't need to think about it or worry about it. I can just enjoy the trip. Right? So that's where I would start to think as you get more wiggle room in your budget, as you get more wealth, is start to put in those yearly goals you want to spend towards, right? And after you've taken care of your investing, that's going to give you a lot more control and freedom down the road too, in the way you conduct your life and do the things you want to do.
That's super helpful. Yeah, that's great advice. And then it's one more year now from that time. Mm-hmm. I'm either changing jobs or I'm in a period of like a lull. I've either lost the job. What do you tell that guy?
Yeah. If you lost a job, don't beat yourself up. Jobs are temporary. We're going to have, as millennials, or Generation Z, whatever, we're going to have multiple jobs. The age of working at the same company for 40 years, getting the nice Rolex from your boss at the end of it, ain't happening anymore. We're all going to be in different careers, changing careers, and I would actually say, think about changing careers or changing jobs. Don't be comfortable at the same place. Like start thinking about looking out and check what's out there. I found in my experience, the more jobs I've changed, the more money I've made and the more better experiences I've had, right? So I would say from my own experience, I wish I'd changed jobs sooner at times, right? I started my career, worked like 7.5 years at the same company. That's pretty uncommon for someone in my, age group. Like I don't know anyone else who did that, but in hindsight, I probably should have jumped a little bit sooner and made some changes to grow your network, all that. So number one, don't beat yourself up if you lose a job. It's a fact of life. We're going to change jobs. That's why we have the emergency fund. We plan for that, right? There's going to be lulls. There's going to be times where we want to take a break or we just need to take a break and reposition. Like that's cool. That's why we have an emergency fund set up. From there, you're going to have that's where we really want to get back to, and keeping track of our spending is going to be really helpful for us, right? If we know how much we have to spend, then we know how much time we have before we have to start work again. We can put it into time. Okay, well, I've got, I spend this much. I have, 4 months before I'm going to be not have any money, right? So I've got to work to get to that point, right? And so having that framework in mind there's anxiety that's always going to be around a change, right? But taking the money side out of it and going, okay, I know how much time I have. Now I can use this time and lull toward getting myself where I need to be.
Yeah. And how old are you, by the way? I meant to ask this forever ago.
Oh, I'm 34.
And how many jobs have you had?
Well, I've worked at, I'll put it this way. I worked at 4 different companies, right, so far. But I've had, let's see, the number of jobs have been 1, 2, 3, like 7 different jobs, different roles, right?
Yeah,
all within the financial industry.
Yeah, and I like what you said a lot about that age of being in the same company for an elongated period of time is so gone. And I'm seeing that a lot with a lot of my friends. Even before that, like that 2-year mark is like you're supposed to stay in your job for 2 years. And I'm seeing a lot of people not even do that. Some people are in it for longer, some for much shorter. Some have switched jobs twice, once, even more.
Yeah.
And it's all okay. And I think that's kind of part of this, and having the knowledge that you're sharing right now and the ability to understand your money and how
Yeah.
long you have in between jobs and how
Yep.
it's okay really to take a break, or it's okay to have that lull period, is super helpful to hear. So thank you for saying that. I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd say also take a chance sometimes. You're young. Like you've got time. Roll the dice, do something cool. Like if you really want to work somewhere that's like interesting to you or do something, go and do it. Like, the thing is what I see over time is people, lose that sense of excitement, right? They get stuck in a job, feel like I'm stuck, and they're not, and people feel stuck sometimes, right? They have to do this. I have to work. This is who I am. They define who they are as a human or as a person based on their job, and it's the means to pay your bills, right? That's what a job is, and you're just trying to match your job and your career with your interests and your skills, and and that takes time, just like anything. You've got to figure out where you're good at. You need experience and knowledge, and to test yourself, push yourself. What I really like and see a lot of is that with younger people I'm working with is an interest of they want to be financial independent sooner than previous. So I used to work with folks who are in their 60s, and retiring. They were much more of the mindset of that. Hey, they stuck to their career, they worked it, raised their family, did their thing, and then they want to retire at 60 and do that process. What I'm seeing when I work with younger people in their 30s, or 40s even, they want to have financial independence. They don't want to have to work at their job. They want to be able to say, I can leave, I've got enough money, I can live on this, and I can go and do something else. I can start my own business, I can take a break, I can, I'm seeing a lot of people want to start their own businesses, which is awesome. I think it's a great way to have control over your time and your money, right? It's a big risk. It is a risk, right? But it's a tactical risk you can take if you plan for it the right way. And I think it's one of the things that has been a great part of working with people is having that excitement or lack of fear around starting a business. I think that's going to continue as I look at younger and younger people, as they understand it's not guaranteed. Your job isn't guaranteed. You can be fired. There's going to be turnover or structural change. So the more nimble you can be, or the more open to those different changes, I think is really great for you. And being a lifelong learner, that you're open and you're agile and not feeling like I'm stuck and have to do this thing. I can do whatever I want. I have control over my life.
Yeah, and I think having an understanding of money is like the kind of key to unlock that feeling of I have control over my life. I think
100%.
those two things are absolutely hand in hand. Outside of that incredible piece of advice you just shared with everybody, do you have any other advice for young guys right now, somebody in their early 20s, late 20s, anywhere in there? What is your advice for young guys today?
We're living in an age of increasing loneliness. And I think all around us, it's really easy to get this feeling that we don't know anyone, we don't have friends, we don't have we're isolated. And I think the number one thing you can do is go and find other people who are your same age or even a little bit older, right? And make friends with people. Get involved with a sport, a hobby, an interest that you like, and try something that you're curious about or not sure. Just go and do it and try to make friend group. I think the big thing is like I've never had a bad time spending money with friends. Like that's a great way to like spend your money and your time, is having a friendship and a group of people that you like being around. And from that's going to come so much fulfillment and a reason to like do stuff at the end of the week, right? As you're working, you're like, well, I get to go hang out with my friends, or I get to go play the sport on Thursday night. Like that's awesome. Like I've had the beauty of like being involved with a sport. I'll give you a little of my personal background. I played rugby starting in high school and college, played at the University of Michigan. I played out here in Oregon. It has been a lifelong group of friends that I've been able to build through a sport that I know I'm going to know these guys forever. And like, if I go and meet up with them when we're 50 or 60, it's going to be like we never left. And I think that's what's missing. And I think about that. I'm so grateful because so many people don't have that. And it's one thing that if you can go and find and nurture a group of friends that you really enjoy and water that, like, and really treat that as gold, that you have that in your life, like nurture that, be around that, go and find that, and seek it out if you don't have it. And don't feel bad if you don't. Like, it's really hard nowadays to be young and have a friend group. Dating's crazy, right? It's really a challenge. Like, I met my wife before Tinder. Like, Tinder, I think, got launched right when I met my wife, like in 2013. So like I heard about this stuff going on, and it's like nowadays it's really challenging to like meet someone because of that the way we interact is through the internet, and that makes it really hard compared to just going and meeting someone out in the real world. And so I think don't get discouraged. Understand, like with everything, is understand what's going on, and you're not a bad person, and it's okay to feel bad about these things. And but what's the solution? It's going out, it's hanging out, it's finding people you like, and trying some things that are different. And I think when it comes all into money, at the end of the day, money is just a means to an end, right? It's just a way to do the things we want to do. We live in a world that's driven by money. We just got to acknowledge that. We can bemoan that, right? And believe me, there's plenty to bemoan in the world. But I think the number one thing we can do is just focus on, hey, what can I do right now that's going to put me better on the track I want to be, right? I want to have a friend group. Great. Go out and meet some friends. Go down the street to the bar. Hang out with some people. See what's going on. Go in, if there's people playing games in a park, go and hang out. Like, figure this stuff out and go and do it and immerse yourself and try new things. And I think that's like the number one thing you can do is just more finding that fulfillment in people around you. The world around you is going to be kind of the best way to then couch that with all your money issues.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that those are the best places to spend your money. As you said, you've never regretted spending money hanging out with friends. And I completely agree with what you just said there. What do you have any money or financial regrets looking back at your younger self?
Oh man. Too many to count. So let's see. I mean, there's things where, yeah, I personally, I love clothing. I like clothes. Really easy to spend money on clothes. And I look at my closet now and I'm looking at all the stuff I have. I'm like, I don't wear half this stuff. It's not my
Yeah.
style anymore. There's just so many times I'm like, why did I buy that too? Like, why did I think that would look cool on me? Right? Like, it's just like that doesn't make any sense. So I think clothing's a big thing I regret like buying so much of. Like, and it's really expensive and it adds up and it clogs up a space, especially if you're sharing with roommates and you've got a small area. That's, to me, in hindsight, I regret, of like, yeah, I could have spent a lot less money on clothing and saved more of that or spent it on hanging out with friends, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think I started really early with saving really aggressively, and that's because I had the benefit of working in a financial company where everyone around me is getting the same information right away. We're getting the data dump, the brain dump right away of here's what you need to do. You need to save money now. So, I started saving like 20% right away when I got into working, right? And it wasn't making much money. I was making like, I think my first paycheck back in 2013 was like 45 grand. It was crazy. Like,
Wow.
I was nuts. I was like, I'm thinking now, like there's no way I could survive on $45,000 living in Portland, Oregon now. Like,
No.
impossible. This was back in 2013. But I made it work. Now, there's times, like I said, I overdrafted. Wasn't fun. So then there was times, okay, I need to peel it back a little bit. Maybe I'm saving a little too much, right? If I can't meet all my living expenses, I need to dial it back. Instead of 25%, maybe I'll do 20%, And so there's little tweaks I made along the way. But I think that's the one thing is whenever you feel like if something's building up, like in your life, like be it, clothing or stuff really is a big question. If you're getting too much
Yeah.
stuff in your life, that's a sign that you need to rethink where you're spending your money, right? And just really think about it and say, you know what? Try to sell some stuff off, clear it down. Stuff you're not interested, clear it out. Like don't sit on it because it's just, yeah, that accumulation of stuff is a real problem, I think, and that's something that I've recognized in myself that I need to work on. I'm still working on. So
I have that problem too. So this is
yeah.
this is good for me too. And then my last question for you is, what is your advice to your younger self?
Mm. Um, don't stress out so much. Like things are gonna be okay. Like it's gonna work out. You're gonna figure it out. You're smart enough to figure it out. You can like go with the flow. And if you're not feeling good about something, if you're anxious about something or something doesn't feel right, listen to that and act on it, right? So, I spent a long time at a company that, really wasn't good psychologically. It was a very poor psychological environment as far as a work environment, very draining, very much kind of beat you down. And I realized like, hey, this is really making me feel bad every day, right? If you're waking up and you dread what you're doing, like literally dreaded, but I just pushed through it because, I played sports. It's like you just bite down and go, and that's part of it. And in hindsight, that made really, really just added to my stress, and I wasn't enjoying life. It took away from like doing day-to-day things that were really important to me. Like I wouldn't text friends back. I was too tired because stress will wear you out. It wears you out physically, tires you.
Yeah.
And it narrows the scope of things you can be interested in. And so if you're at a job and you just hate what you're doing, like you wait, the alarm clock wakes up and you're like, fuck, I don't want to get up today. That's a sign that you need to make a change. Like that's your body and your feeling telling you this isn't right. And that's, so start to plan to make that change and do something. It doesn't need to be even the right direction. Do something different, try it out. And that's one thing that I wished I made changes sooner, was getting out of a bad work situation.
How long were you at the company for?
Oh my God, 7.5 years.
Oh, shit. And at what point did you feel that like fuck feeling?
Oh, I felt that like I think like in hindsight, as I look back, I'll give you this funny story. It was like the first week I was there, we like finally got into our seats of like our job, like 'cause it's all training and whatever, and just presentations. We get into a seat and we're like doing the job. We're kind of we're just kind of helping out with the people. And this job was we had to prepare paperwork and send it out every day for our clients, to like new clients or existing clients, to like do some paperwork. And we had deadlines of this need to go out today to get to them so they could sign it and get it back. We weren't using DocuSign. Literally sending out like 20 pages of documents these people had to sign, right? We had to prepare it all and label it all and highlight it all. Brutally manual process. And it's like, okay, pretty overwhelming. I remember a woman who'd been working next to me was there, and she was crying at her desk doing this because she like had made a mistake, and she had to redo all of it. And the mail deadline was coming up. So she's crying next to me, and I'm like, that should have been the moment of like, I need to get out of here, right? Like, this is not good. This is not a good place. But part of me just didn't have that experience or feeling of like that agency to know like that's wrong. Like, in listening, unless I'd never have that feeling of like misalignment between, what I'm feeling and like what I'm seeing, right, or thinking. That should have been the moment that I had left and done something, worked a different company, or went down a different path, right? Now I'm glad I went down this path. Like, I learned a lot staying at that company. It's taught me to, anywhere I've gone since then, it's a breeze because it's never as punishing as it was then. But it has left me with a lot of like when I work now, if I've done all my work, there's still like an anxious part of me is like, I should be doing something right now, right? Because there is this sense of like keeping you busy all the time with so much work to where you're like, there's always something you have to do, always, always, always. And like, that is a brutal environment for any person to be in. And it doesn't help any of your employees. It only helps the company, which is they're trying to squeeze you. And if you're in that environment, like, get out. Like, there's better companies. It gets better. I left in 2021 after COVID because I didn't like the way they were handling their COVID policies, and I was just fed up. Like, I just didn't like the pathway I could go down and perceive, and to move to a different company. It was like night and day different, how different it was and how easy it was to work in and do your job. And then moving over here to my newest company, it's been another level up. It's like, this is even better, right? I've around people who really are super knowledgeable about who they're working with. I'm learning so much. I feel empowered to like grow myself even more and push myself in ways that I hadn't thought about. So it's like, I think that's the big takeaway I had was, that's a very unique environment, and it's kind of there's something called a phrase I called the gift of pain, right? And like, if you get injured or you go through a hardship, that is a gift that you can learn from if you choose to learn from it. And that's the gift I learned from, is like, it took me a long time to learn that lesson, but that's something I would say to a younger person is, if it sucks what you're doing, you hate it, don't spend your time hating it. Like, do something else. There's lots of jobs. Like, figure it out. Do something totally different. Don't feel boxed in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I love everything you said in this episode. I think you gave so many good tools and tips to everybody. I think you brought so much value to this podcast, to this audience. You are like one of the perfect guests for what I'm trying to build here and what I'm building here. And I'm so happy that you agreed to come on and that we did this today. You're like, yeah, of course, whatever. But no, this is truly super
It's
beneficial.
what I do.
Yeah. No, but I'm sitting here and I'm just like, this is the stuff that I still need to hear now today. It's the stuff I wish I heard before. And I believe what you said in here is going to help a lot of people and bring a lot of value to them. So thank you so much for everything you said in here today. And if anybody wants to find you, to work with you, where can they connect with you and reach you?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me at michael.lacivita@domainmoney.com. That's my work email. I'll be able to answer everything there. That's probably the best way to reach me. But otherwise, if anyone has any questions about anything, right, just reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about finances. If you just have a quick questions about here or there, I'm happy to help. If you want to work with us as a financial planner, we have services that are awesome with Domain. I think they're light years ahead that's out there in the industry, and they're really tailored for folks that are starting out or have some money but don't fit in the normal financial advisor model. I think we're killing it right now, frankly, in terms of what we do. But if you have questions about life or anything at all, I'm happy to help too. Like, I've been there, seen it. Just reach out. I'm happy to help.
I will put your email as well in the show notes of the podcast and your LinkedIn so anybody can connect to you and find you too. So
Yeah.
thank you so much again for doing this. I think this is awesome. And anything else you want to say to anybody, or you feel good?
No, I'd say, like you said, keep your head up, sort through it. It's all, you have power, you can do it. Just positive vibes, keep it up. Like if there's things you deal with in your life that are tough, that's okay. It's gonna happen. It's all part of the journey.
Love it.